Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world. One quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 24th June 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Iran. Following intense conflict, a fragile ceasefire between Iran and Israel was brokered by Qatar and announced by US President Donald Trump. Before the truce, Israel launched airstrikes on Tehran, hitting the entrances to Evin prison, which houses dissidents, while Iran attacked Beersheba in Israel, causing casualties. Despite the ceasefire announcement, Iran denied firing missiles at Israel. Iranian officials claimed victory after Israeli airstrikes targeted Iranian air defenses and nuclear facilities. President Masoud Pezeshkian sees the ceasefire as a triumph and is considering nuclear talks. The U.S. military conducted strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, potentially using B-2 stealth bombers and bunker buster bombs. Although President Trump claimed the strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program, a U.S. intelligence report suggested it was only delayed by a few months. Analysts believe Iran had already relocated its uranium stockpiles. The attacks have been criticized for challenging Trump's anti-war stance and potentially reinforcing Beijing's perception of U.S. unpredictability. Iranians are skeptical of the ceasefire with Israel, and those in Germany are experiencing fear and helplessness. Iranian officials have threatened to mine the Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping route for oil and gas. Iranian media celebrated the attack on the U.S. base in Qatar, despite no American fatalities. United States. President Donald Trump announced the Israel-Iran ceasefire after U.S. attacks on Iranian nuclear sites, a decision that reportedly surprised his top officials. Despite Trump's claim of ending the war, a U.S. intelligence report indicated the strikes only delayed Iran's nuclear program by a few months. Trump supporters have expressed mixed reactions to the U.S. bombing of Iranian nuclear sites. The U.S. strikes on Iran have caused global travel disruptions and flight cancellation. Democrats have criticized the White House for delaying briefings to Congress about the strikes against Iran and are seeking a war powers vote to require congressional approval for further military action. The conflict between Hamas and Israel is escalating into a regional conflict in West Asia with U.S. support. Israel and Iran have agreed to honor the truce if the other does, following attacks that angered President Trump. Israel struck the entrances to Evin prison in Tehran, known for holding dissidents and political prisoners. Israel's strike on Iran may reshape Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's legacy after months of political turmoil. Qatar played a crucial role in mediating the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Iranian President Pezeshkian expressed regret to the Emir of Qatar, stating Qatar was not the target of the attack on the U.S. base. NATO Chief Mark Rutte received congratulatory texts from Donald Trump, who praised his decisive action on Iran, noting Europe will increase defense spending. Rutte praises Trump's decisive action in Iran, citing increased Middle East stability and reduced migrant flows to Europe. China is actively maneuvering on the global stage, both economically and politically. President Xi Jinping, while sending Premier Li Qiang to the BRICS summit in Rio, engaged with Singapore's Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, advocating for joint resistance against hegemony. In a display of military strength, China intends to hold a parade in September to mark the 80th anniversary of Japan's WDE surrender, showcasing its advanced weaponry. The United States finds itself navigating the implications of China's global reach. The White House clarified that despite Trump's remarks, the U.S. ban on China purchasing Iranian oil remains in effect. The US is also monitoring China's increasing involvement in the Middle East amid the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Rare earths may serve as a potential bridge in US-China relations amidst increasing strategic competition. Turning to the United Kingdom, an audit of UK-China relations has revealed increased Chinese espionage activities, prompting a £600 million investment in British intelligence services. In South Korea, protests have erupted over China's construction of structures in the Yellow Sea, with concerns mounting that these could be used for military purposes. Across the strait, Beijing has condemned Taiwan's William Lai for referring to Taiwan as a country, accusing him of inciting tensions. Japan faces increasing security concerns with a growing SDF presence in Okinawa amidst the perceived threat from China. China plans a military parade in September to commemorate the 80th anniversary of Japan's WHAM surrender. Iran continues to be a key economic partner for China, with China relying on Iranian crude oil imports via dark fleet to bypass American sanctions. This partnership is further complicated by Trump's statement regarding China's continued purchase of Iranian oil. Singapore has found itself at the center of diplomatic efforts, with President Xi Jinping urging Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to collaborate in resisting hegemony during Wong's visit to China. Within the European Union, tensions are rising as China and the EU express a willingness to negotiate after Brussels barred Chinese firms from medical device tenders, prompting threats of retaliation from China. Meanwhile, China and India have agreed to strengthen relations and maintain peace along their shared border during a meeting between officials Ajit Doval and Wang Yi. The United States faces a complex geopolitical landscape following President Trump's ordered airstrikes on Iran and a subsequent ceasefire ending a 12-day conflict involving Israel and Iran, a situation from which he seeks a swift exit amidst travel disruptions in the Middle East. Domestically, a severe heat wave strains the power grid, exacerbated by increased consumption from AI data centers, while the Federal Reserve resists pressure to cut interest rates. A former Justice Department lawyer has accused the Trump administration of disregarding court orders on deportation flights, and the U.S. consulate in Hong Kong has condemned the repression of U.S. Independence Day celebration. A U.S. judge blocked the withholding of $5 billion in EV charger funds from 14 states, while another ruled against authors claiming AI training on copyrighted material. The NTSB criticized Boeing's safety culture and the FAA's oversight, and U.S. strikes in Somalia have doubled, raising concerns about drone use. The State Department offers $3 million for information on the leader of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragui. Edward Corristine, a prominent employee of the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, resigned after Elon Musk's departure. Leading scholars at the summer Davos discussed the U.S. economy and China's tech potential, while an Iran expert analyzed the impact of U.S. airstrikes. North Korea is closely monitoring U.S. military actions, and the Club World Cup is impacted by the U.S. heat wave. Turning to Ukraine, the country is enduring continued Russian attacks, resulting in at least 78 civilian deaths and over 600 injuries across multiple incidents, including a missile strike on the Dnipro region that killed at least 17. Ukrainian soldiers have reported an increase in Russia's deployment of more advanced drones. President Zelensky is actively seeking security guarantees at NATO, emphasizing that Chinese defense companies are aiding Russia's war efforts. NATO has experienced a renewed sense of purpose because of Russia's war against Ukraine, highlighting the importance of Article 5. The NATO summit in The Hague is prioritizing increased military spending to accommodate President Trump, potentially overshadowing discussions about Russian aggression. NATO Chief Mark Rutte has advised Europe and Canada to be less concerned about a potential U.S. withdrawal. In China, Huawei Technologies continues to struggle with advancing to the 5nm chip manufacturing process due to ongoing U.S. sanctions. President Zelensky told NATO that Chinese defense companies are aiding Russia's war on Ukraine, a war crucial to European security. Japan is bolstering its defenses against China, including its first domestic missile test, featuring the Type 88 surface-to-ship missile. Simultaneously, Japan lodged a protest against China's construction of a new structure in the East China Sea, situated west of the median line between the two nations. In a diplomatic shift, Japan postponed security discussions with the United States to mitigate American pressure and decouple trade disagreements from defense commitments. Renewed engagement is anticipated post-Upper House election on July 20th, intending to negotiate from a more robust domestic stance. Turning to domestic affairs, Japan has integrated Select My Number card functionalities into iPhones, with aims to broaden smartphone compatibility, notably including its utility as a health insurance card. Efforts are underway to create an organization dedicated to enhancing working conditions within the anime sector, forming part of a broader 5-year initiative to elevate overseas sales of Japanese content to 20 trillion by 2033. Research indicates that the traditional Japanese diet, washoku, may offer protection against depression, with frequent consumers exhibiting a 17% to 20% lower likelihood of experiencing symptoms. Economically, Daiwa is launching a $690 real estate fund focused on Japanese rental housing and hotels, seeking to leverage the thriving market and assets resistant to inflation. The reappointment of the Japan Bourse CEO faced a tighter vote, reflecting investor concern over the stock's 18.6% decline in the past year, which lagged behind the Topix Index's 1.6% increase. Socially and legally, Japan is contending with several challenges. A U.S. Marine in Okinawa Prefecture received a 7-year prison sentence for a sexual assault committed in May 24. A teenager is being prosecuted for a viral prank involving a condom at a conveyor belt sushi restaurant, part of a series of incidents known as sushi terrorism that has raised alarm and damaged restaurant reputations. Public health is also a concern, as whooping cough cases have surged to over 31,000 this year, nearly an 8-fold increase from the previous year and exceeding the annual record. In the wake of heightened tensions, Israel and Iran entered a fragile ceasefire brokered with intervention from then U.S. President Donald Trump, who publicly rebuked both nations for violations. Trump reportedly urged Benjamin Netanyahu to de-escalate an Israeli airstrike. Netanyahu then declared a historic victory, claiming Israel had successfully thwarted Iran's nuclear project, though details concerning the Fordo nuclear site remained unclear. Trump conveyed his frustration with both Iran and Israel for violating the initial ceasefire agreement, using direct language in a live television address to express his displeasure. The commencement of the ceasefire was marked by confusion, including missile warnings and reports of a missile strike on a residential building in Be'er Sheva. Simultaneously, Tehran experienced intense Israeli bombings. While Trump announced the ceasefire, official confirmations from Israeli and Iranian authorities were initially absent. Despite Iranian missiles causing casualties and destruction, many Israelis expressed satisfaction with the ceasefire. The situation remained tense, characterized by reports of missile strikes and residents taking precautions, yet also marked by a sense of relief. Early reports indicated potential impact of U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear program. The Trump administration allocated $30 million in aid to a U.S. and Israeli-backed group distributing food in Gaza. Separately, Israeli forces and drones opened fire on hundreds of people awaiting aid trucks in central Gaza, resulting in at least 25 deaths, according to Palestinian witnesses and hospitals. Turning to Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese commented on Donald Trump's strong criticism of ceasefire violations by both Iran and Israel. In legal news, the federal court ruled that the ABC unlawfully terminated Antoinette Lattouf, a casual broadcaster, following an orchestrated campaign by pro-Israel lobbyists. The termination was found to be a breach of the Fair Work Act because it was partly based on Lattouf's political views opposing the Israeli military campaign in Gaza. Senior ABC managers were reportedly in a state of panic due to the lobbying efforts. Meanwhile, in France, former French Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin has launched a new political party named Humanist France, fueling speculation that he intends to run for the French presidency in 2027. Villepin is known for his opposition to the US-led Iraq war in 2023 and his criticisms of Israel's actions in Gaza. Across the Channel in the United Kingdom, 5 elected representatives of the Board of Deputies, the largest body representing British Jews, have been suspended for 2 years for criticizing the Israeli government's actions in Gaza. All 36 signatories to an open letter were found to have breached the Board of Deputies' Code of Conduct following a 2-month investigation. United Kingdom. The UK government is bracing for potential attacks within its borders, attributing this to Russia's escalating military activities and Iran's targeting of dissidents, which heighten the risk of domestic conflict. To counter growing threats, the UK plans to augment its nuclear capabilities by acquiring a squadron of US-made F-35A fighter jets, designed to carry us tactical nuclear warheads that might be stored domestically. Keir Starmer unveiled this initiative at the NATO summit, signaling a notable change in the UK's nuclear strategy. Reinforcing its commitment to Ukraine, the UK is dispatching 350 British-manufactured air defence missiles reconfigured for ground deployment, financed by £70 million in interest accrued from frozen Russian assets. This is the first instance where the UK has directly employed Russia-related funds to supply arms to Kyiv. On the economic front, Chinese automaker Chery Auto is exploring the possibility of opening a manufacturing facility in the UK as part of a broader localization strategy prompted by rising tariffs imposed by the UK and EU, as well as increasing demand for Chinese vehicles, especially the Omoda and Jaeku brands introduced in the UK in September. Meanwhile, the UK government recognizes China as an essential economic ally, despite increasing apprehension about China's alleged espionage, destabilization attempts and disruptions targeting the UK's economy and democratic processes. The UK's antitrust regulator is also examining Google, suggesting that the tech giant may need to provide alternative search options to UK users, potentially enabling them to select different search platforms. Ukraine. Bolstering its defense capabilities, Ukraine will receive 350 air defense missiles from the UK, funded by £70 million, in interest derived from frozen Russian assets, representing the first instance of the UK directly using these funds for arms procurement. These missiles are British-made and adapted for ground deployment. In related news, Volodymyr Zelensky is scheduled to meet with Donald Trump on June 25 to discuss critical matters, including sanctions against Russia and a price ceiling on Russian oil. Australia is set to benefit from increased flight availability from Israel after a ceasefire agreement with Iran, according to Defense Personnel Minister Matt Keogh, following an IDF flight evacuating 119 Australians from Tel Aviv. Domestically, Erin Patterson's jury trial is ongoing. She faces murder and attempted murder charges linked to a 2023 mushroom lunch. Justice Christopher Beale is now instructing the jury. The Salvation Army's Flying Padres are reaching remote communities in the outback, offering support to residents. In international legal news, Australia is being considered as a possible location for the interim release of former Philippines President Rodrigo, currently held by the ICC in the Netherlands, according to Philippines Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio. The United States government faces scrutiny after a federal appeals court mandated the return of Jordan Melga Salmeron, who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. The court is pressing for details on the government's adherence to the order, particularly since Melga Salmeron's deportation occurred soon after a court injunction against his removal. This situation echoes a previous instance where the Trump administration was instructed to repatriate another individual similarly deported to El Salvador. Turkey's President Erdogan celebrated the newly established Iran-Israel truce, which came on the heels of President Trump's ceasefire declaration. Amidst this diplomatic activity, Turkish authorities detained 158 military members, all suspected of connections to the Hizmet movement, a group opposing the current political order. Kenya is bracing for a nationwide march commemorating the anniversary of the parliamentary storming during last year's anti-government demonstrations. This event will also pay tribute to those who lost their lives during the protests. Rights activists and victims' families are the driving force behind the march, with opposition leaders proclaiming it a people's public holiday. The government, however, has cautioned against any activities that might disturb public order, fueling anxieties about possible confrontations and disturbances. Sudan is facing a dire situation as the World Health Organization, WHO, has strongly condemned an attack on Al-Mujahid Hospital in West Kordofan. This tragic event resulted in the deaths of over 40 civilians, a number that includes 6 children and 5 health workers. The hospital was located near the active front line between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, exacerbating the dangers posed by the nation's continuing civil war. The WHO's local office also stated that many more individuals suffered injuries during the assault. Colombia is grappling with the aftermath of a devastating landslip caused by severe flooding, leaving at least 10 dead and 15 still missing. Rescue operations are underway amidst challenging conditions. Turning to the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer's government faces substantial internal opposition to its welfare bill. More than 120 Labour MPs have rebelled against the party line, signalling deep divisions within the party. Adding to the pressure, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has publicly called for a pause on the legislation. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.